difficulties at this time during this time of illness. We pray for those who have been ill or who have lost loved ones. Also for those who may have been in our service as military personnel or emergency service personnel that have sacrificed much. We pray for them and their families. We pray for a quick resolve to the pandemic that is going on, that those who are working on solutions will be inspired and directed as to how to help in the cure of this disease. We pray that we may now go forward this night with an effort to bring a sense of unity to this beautiful city of Alpine and help those who are struggling with difficulties. And this is our prayer in Jesus Christ's name, amen. Okay, I don't see Shane on yet. I do need to recognize also those who are with us. Chief Reed Thompson is with us from the fire department. Welcome. David Church, our city attorney, is here with us. Chief Brian Gwilliam is here with us, and Bonnie Cooper, who is our city recorder. Shane, looks like you may have joined us. Are you with us?
Yeah, my service isn't the best, but I did get in.
Okay, so Shane is with us as well. Okay, we will begin with the consent calendar. Is there anything, Shane, we need to be aware of that's anything different than the bond releases that have been put in front of us?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, I have made some corrections to the minutes, spelling, and then on page 4, line 38, of finishing a sentence on line 38, page 5, correction on line 17 to say variable speed pump instead of speed bump. And then a correction to what Jessica said on line 14 on page 5. She said that it is required to be complete by October 15th. What if there continues to be setback? It wasn't clear, and so I made that correction if everyone's okay with that one. And then some spelling changes for the minutes. Does anyone else have corrections to the minutes?
I did, Lon. I sent, hopefully you got these, Bonnie. I sent just a few. I said just some typos or sentence structure at the top of near the top of page 8. Page 9, and this is 9 like in the minutes as numbered on the page. Line 33, I think it was discussed to make the pavilion as a idea in the past. It had been discussed to make a football storage equipment, but that wasn't my suggestion there. And then on page 9, line 62, I just wanted to clarify. I think the decision was that Healy Park was the leading location, but Shane was still going to talk to the soccer league about the impacts to the existing field, if I understood that correctly.
Jason also sent an email with some changes.
Okay. Okay.
One question also, Shane, I think you mentioned last meeting you would add that spreadsheet with the projects to the packet. I don't see that in there, but instead, are we, it looked like they were kind of enumerated within the meeting minutes. Does that cover it? Is that the intention?
I think that should be fine, Greg. We could put them in there in a different format if you would like.
No, yeah. It's probably fine. It looks like it's covered here. I just didn't know if you had more detail in the other format, but whatever the intention was there,
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, if there's no other discussion or corrections to minutes on the, I'll take a motion on the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar with the exceptions that were just outlined, including the corrections.
Okay, thank you, Carla. Motion by Carla to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Second by Greg. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Mayor Stout, welcome. You can take over. Unmute yourself though. You're still gonna have to.
There we go.
Gonna have to hear you. Okay, very
Thank
good.
you. I now understand more fully why my children make fun of me.
And Troy, you're a little quiet, so I don't know if there's a way to make you a little louder.
Oh, boy. Let's see. Is that any better? I'll try to move it closer. Sorry, today is a electronic nightmare, I guess. Can you hear me now?
It sounds a little bit louder.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry for the late arrival with my electronic challenges. I guess we'll move to public comment. We'd like to turn time over to the public. If there are any comments that they would like to make. I know that we typically, when we do an electronic meeting, we ask for people to turn their comments in by 5 o'clock. We had kind of late notice that this would be a public meeting. So if there's anybody who would still like to submit an email, hopefully, Austin, we're still in a position where we could receive those emails real time. Is that right? Austin, are you there?
Got the mute off. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I can see right now I'm looking at the YouTube comments. I don't have anything on there right now. And I do know that we have a Boy Scout that wanted to present tonight. He's scrambling, trying to get here from football practice. So he said he'd try and be here as close. He might be like 7:10-ish is what he was telling me. So.
Okay. All right. But up to this point, we don't have any public comment. Is that right?
No, well, actually, I'm sorry. We did have some emails. So let me get those here.
And for those who are listening in, the reason for the late notice is we did have a case of COVID strike the home of one of our city staff members. We felt it would be best to go ahead and put the meeting off to an electronic agenda one more time so that we can make sure everyone is safe.
Okay, so we do have a public comment here, and I forwarded this to all of the city council members. So I'm not going to read it in its entirety. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase what is being proposed here. But Natalie Lacey is resident of Alpine, is suggesting that Creekside is a great place for all types of activities. However, she thinks it would be a great place for a skate park. And so she thinks it would be a great asset that you have a splash pad, you have tennis courts, and there are youth in the community who would use that. And she feels like it would be a good way to have a positive activity for, certain kids in the community. And so anyways, that's what she's proposing. And again, I forwarded that on to the city council. And so you can read that in its entirety. And then we have another public comment, and this one is from Blossom Hanson. And let's see, she doesn't say her address here, but she is would like to comment on the stop sign at 300 North and Country Manor Lane. And she says, I'm writing this concerning the stop sign at 300 North and Country Manor Lane. Over the past few months, I have noticed many cars speeding through the stop sign. I have witnessed so many close call car accidents happen there. I was almost T-boned there myself because some reckless driver ran the stop sign. I am concerned for the safety of young children and adults that live around there. The other day, I saw a driver almost hit a young child who was trying to cross the street at the stop sign. I'm hoping that by bringing this issue to the city, that you would help stop these reckless drivers by putting a speed bump or something else to make the sign more apparent. I have a feeling that by putting a speed bump or either at the stop sign or just before the sign, it will help potentially save someone's life. Thank you, Blossom Hanson. And let's see here. And I believe that was the last public comment. Yes, that's the last public comment that I have.
Any comments from council on the skateboard park idea or the stop sign issue?
On the stop sign, it is such a big intersection there. I wonder if, larger signs might be more visible, or I don't know if there's crossing lines that go across there. That might be another thing to make the stop more apparent and kind of help with pedestrian issues there. But.
Yes, that is, I have a comment on that also. That is sort of a hard intersection to see some of that, and a stop line or a painted line or a stop on the road might help to, like Greg's saying, that is a difficult intersection.
Yeah.
So I have a comment. I drive that, quite a bit because it's part of my carpool route. I don't know, from what I've experienced, I don't think it's lack of signage. I think it's people's inattentiveness. It seems like most people are distracted by their electronic devices. And so I honestly don't think it's a problem with our lack of signage. I think I think maybe putting a stop sign, a painting on the road, that's a great adage, and I'll add it. But if you're not paying attention to the road, you're not going to see that or the stop sign. Do you know what I'm saying? I just feel like there is a huge issue. I mean, come on, my car just got totaled because someone ran a red light because they were on their phone and not paying attention. And that was a red stoplight. It is what it is, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, if you feel that painting the stop on that road will help, then we should definitely do it.
Shane, how hard would that be to accomplish? We have
Not that hard. We could take care of that. I think it would bring some attention to the stop sign.
It seems to be the downhill portion of that one that I would guess people are running through because they're coming down the hill a little fast, versus the flat north and south part of the road is my opinion. I don't know. I haven't seen anyone run it.
I thought it was is it only a two-way? I thought it was only a two-way stop. Is it a four-way?
No, I think it's a four-way.
It's four-way.
Is it? Oh, I only go one way and I didn't notice that there were.
Carla, that's my point. It seems that it's a two-way. That's why I say it's a difficult intersection, because of the feel of it. And so if we had something on the road that said stop or stop a stop line, then that might help bring attention to that. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Well, why don't we get the stripe and the stop painted on the roads and see what happens, if it helps. The difficulty with speed bumps, we've talked about that before. It's difficult with plows and emergency vehicles, things like that. It's not out of the question in my mind, but let's graduate to that point if we have to.
As per the skate park idea, it's been a while since that discussion has happened in the city. I don't know if you want to bring that type of a discussion back up again. I wouldn't be opposed to listening to citizens' input on the skate park, but that's my thought.
Yeah, it's been a pretty big hot button in the past, but it has been a while since it came up. It does present some challenges, bringing in outside traffic, because skate parks, wherever they are, Draper has one. I think it's, there's a couple in Utah County, one in Orem. They do tend to draw crowds from outside of the area. So we want to make sure we talk about the parking issues there and any other impact that it might have. But it's actually growing in demand. It's not shrinking. It seems to be gaining momentum. Any other comments on the skate park from council?
Just,
I think we could, oh, sorry, Jason. I think we could talk about it again. We just were in Sun Valley and there was a skate park and there were dads with their young children. I think it's taking on a different, sentiment in the communities than maybe what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of scooter activity in skate parks, kids with their parents and scooters. And yeah.
my only thing would be, and maybe it goes along with what Lon was saying, is that we had such a negative response to the citizenry around the Creekside Park when we brought this up before. We can do it again, but we've done this before and we've seen that overwhelming response against putting one in there. I mean, it's one thing if it's at my house or Jessica's house that's not next to the park, but when you're right next to the park, we do need to listen to those citizens, and a lot of them have been very vocal against it in the past.
Yeah. As a council member, I was opposed to it in the past. And I agree with what Jessica said, that it has taken on a different light than it had 10 or 15 years ago. When Creekside was created, it was pretty clear that people wanted to remain kind of a quiet residential park. But there are pros and cons, and there are people who I'm sure still feel the same, that they're just as opposed as they were in the past. I think there are some who may have moved off of that mark a little bit. But we'd certainly be happy to bring it up in city council if somebody would like to request it as an agenda item. Okay, any more public comment? Austin, did the Boy Scout show up?
It looks like our Boy Scout is here. So Tate, if you want to go ahead and present to the city council, you can go ahead and do that now.
Okay. Hello. So my name's Tate Barney. I live in Alpine. I'm a member of Scout Troop 26, and I'm here tonight to present my Scout project to Alpine City. I talked to Austin, and he's given me two options to paint the curbs in Alpine, and I decided to do Main Street from 120 South to 200 North. I decided, so it's kind of about 1,500 square feet. So I need like 13 gallons. Sorry. I was wondering if Alpine would like to pay $350 towards my project and for paint. And then my parents have agreed to pay the remaining $250 and tax for the rest of the paint and also rollers needed. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Tell us again where you're going to paint the curbs.
On Main Street from 120 South to 200 North.
Okay. I haven't noticed. Are those in dire need, Austin?
They are in need of a refresh. So Shane drove around town and kind of identified a few areas that are lacking paint, and this was one of them.
Okay.
We usually try to freshen the paint up at least once a year, especially in these major areas like Main Street.
At both sides of the street where needed.
Yes.
Does anybody have any objection to splitting the cost? We're getting some free labor and people pitching in on the cost. It's like a good deal.
No objection from me. I'm good for this project.
Okay, anybody else have anything to say about that? Okay, let's go ahead and plan on participating in the financial piece of that, and go and continue to work with Austin and Shane on that as well.
Okay, can I ask Shane? What kind of paint do I need for like to paint it?
It's
What
just
kind of
red curb paint. You can get it at Jones Paint and Glass or Sherman Williams or those, regular paint stores.
So does it matter if it's like water-based or oil?
They have a specific paint for the curbs. They'll know exactly what you're talking about. I've talked with both companies about that in the past. So
Okay, great. Can I also get cones from the city? Sorry.
yeah, we should be able to get some cones for you.
Okay, I'll call you about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to reports and presentations. Shane, do you have anything there? I didn't realize you were going to be in the meeting. I knew you were out of town.
I wasn't sure if it's going to work or not, but the video doesn't work well, but hopefully the sound audio is okay. But we do not have any presentations for tonight or reports.
Okay, good. All right, we'll move on to action item A. Austin, do you want to present this and let what happened in Planning Commission?
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull this up on the screen. So I think it's best to have the actual document pulled up here. That link's not working. Okay, just scroll down to it. So basically what this is this is the transportation element of our general plan. And so this has been in Planning Commission for the last, I want to say 2 or 3 meetings. They've worked on this. They've drafted some language, and it's gone through a few revisions. They've taken some advice. They listened to the city council meeting last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, and they heard David Church's input with regards to municipalities and how the county may not be considered a municipality. So they've adjusted the language to take that into consideration. And so what this would do is this would replace our existing transportation and traffic circulation element of our general plan with this newly drafted version. And so just as a refresher or reminder, the elements of the general plan are designed in two pieces. So there's the goals and then there's the policies. And so what they've drafted is the language here is coming from a draft of the transportation element it's actually been in process for a couple years now. And so this is something that was drafted, most of the language was drafted a few years ago by the Planning Commission. However, this new section here with regards to intermunicipal connections and county connections was recently drafted and added to that draft. So what you see here on your screen in green is the language that they're proposing or recommending to the city council, in addition to the rest of the draft transportation element that was put together by the Planning Commission. So ultimately, they tried to, take into consideration that if we have an existing or planned connection, that those should still be allowed. However, any future any connection that has not been planned for is not something that would be allowed unless we required a amendment to our general plan, our street master plan, and applicable ordinances. And then finally, just to remind you, so in the last city council meeting, we did look at a new street master plan and a new ordinance with regards to this. And so those were both approved by the city council. And so this would be the final piece. So there's 3 pieces. There's the street master plan, there's the general plan, and then there's the ordinance. And so this would be the final piece which outlines what kind of connections we are allowing to Alpine City.
So I guess the thought I had when I looked at this was that this is great. And the Planning Commission has worked hard to get to this point, and the city staff as well. I'm feeling a little insecure that I am able to process it, the whole thing, and see anything that should cause concern or that we might want to consider. I don't think I have the expertise to do that. And I also feel like maybe if we have a little bit more time to chew on it and make sure that we've got a good policy in place. Seems like investing a little bit more time in just letting it sit the way it is and evaluating it and see if there's anything else that comes to mind before we approve it. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I just feel like taking a time out for a minute and really taking a careful look at this maybe over the next couple of weeks. Does anybody else have those thoughts? Okay, any input from council?
I have some input, Mayor.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, so I think to what you're saying, we have an 180-day timeline based on the initial motion for us to modify that. That gives us quite a bit of time. So I don't think there's a problem if we wanted to noodle that a little bit more. One question I would have for Austin is obviously you've sat down with each of the city council members. We've talked about our additions or thoughts about the master plan. Some of those thoughts deal with traffic, transportation, circulation that are outside of simply these connections to the outside. Should we be discussing those and putting those in here as well at the same time? I mean, right now it seems like we're approving this, but there's some other things that potentially, based on the discussions you had with other city council members, might need to be in here as well. What's the plan for us to get those items that we each met with you individually and discussed and bring those to the city council to put in where they need to be in the master plan?
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, I've met with everybody. So a lot of the comments are pertaining to other sections of the ordinance. There might have been a few that did pertain to this. So if we want to sit on this for a few weeks, I can go ahead and collect those other comments and we can add it in here and then just address the entire transportation element at once. That, you know, what's coming here before you tonight is just what's been recommended by the Planning Commission. So it's not taking into consideration any of the discussions that the city council might have had with staff up to this point anyways.
So my proposal would be to postpone this and then add some of those other items. I forget the wording that Carla used, because I think I had something similar in this space in this particular section related to, I forget the wording exactly. I'd have to look the back of my notes, but there were a couple of issues that could be in here if we could discuss that as a city council. So I wouldn't mind postponing this and then trying to make it complete when we approve it with all the items we want to put in.
Is that a motion, Jason?
Unless someone else wants to say things, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we table resolution number R 2020-14, the transportation element of the general plan, until we can add any items or have discussions on items that the city council might want to include above and beyond the connections outside of Alpine City.
Okay. And is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Jason, seconded by Jessica to table to give us an opportunity to digest it a little better and be able to add any additional language before we have a final approval. Any comments on that? Greg, do you have anything you'd like to add or talk about?
No, thank you.
Okay. Carla?
No, but I was ready. I was okay with the way it was. So
Okay. Okay. No other comments though?
Yeah, I was just curious if there is some things that need to be, or that someone has wanted to put in there. Wouldn't it be necessary for us to know a little beforehand so we can digest it prior to having it come again, like tonight? Then, if there's something new added to what we've digested already, I would like to know that probably beforehand.
And I agree. I guess the question is, how does Austin present that to us? We've all met with him, presented ideas. We've got these things out there. Some of them would go in this transportation plan. To your point, Lon, and to Austin, what's the plan to bring those items that we discussed so that, to Lon's point, we know what to expect and have a discussion on it?
Well, the original plan was to bring those items forward one section at a time, or one item at a time, depending on how intensive the item is. But basically in little bite-sized chunks that could be discussed, so that don't just have this huge document in front of us. So that was the original concept. But I think we could probably put together a transportation element and add those few things into it. I mean, I don't know if you want to have more than one meeting to discuss it. Maybe have one meeting to just kind of review what other council members have suggested, and then maybe another meeting after that to make a motion. I'm not sure what the best way is to go about it.
Well, it's like a lot of things that we go over, new policies or ordinances. Sometimes we see it more than once before we vote on it. And so, we could easily, open it up for input outside of the meetings. If you guys want to go to Austin with any additional thoughts, and then bring that to the next meeting in rough draft and see if it's something we feel comfortable with. If not, we move it to the meeting following that one.
But to Lon's point, I mean, would it be beneficial for Austin to compile all of our suggestions and maybe just at the very least send it out so I know what Lon's thinking, Lon knows what I'm thinking, and Carla and Jessica and Greg. I just don't know what anyone else is thinking.
Yeah, and I would defer to David to make sure that that's legal. I know that we have laws that govern how we can communicate on a given topic. David, do you see any challenges with that?
No, there's no problems with that. I would suggest Austin has received from each of you suggestions and input. Those things that are relevant to the transportation element of the general plan, he should put together in some kind of report to you that just says, these are the suggestions that go in the transportation element of the general plan. Identify the council members who've made the suggestions, circulate that well before the meeting, prepare a proposed document that has all those things in there and mark it where it is. And that way, when you consider the resolution next time, you can either accept those things or make a motion to delete those things and get it done either in one meeting or two. But it would be helpful to have a document and a side document, kind of a white paper from Austin that says, these items were, for example, this item was added to the transportation by Jason, suggested by Jason. This item was suggested by Carla, that kind of thing. Otherwise, we're just going to, and send that out well before the meeting so people can do it. That's my suggestion anyway. It's worked for Austin, but it saves meeting time.
Okay.
So, Mayor, we do have an extra week between now and the next city council meeting because there's a fifth Tuesday. So that will help, I think, to get this put together and bring it to the first meeting in October.
Okay, great. Yeah, that does help us. Okay, so we have a motion on the table to take, we have a motion to table, sorry. And I think we can use that this next 3 weeks to zero in on the language we want. And it may not change much at all or at all, because I think, to Carla's point, it looks great now. I just feel, from my perspective, I just want to make sure we're looking into the future to make sure we've covered all the bases that we want to cover. So unless there's any further input, we're going to take a vote. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? And motion passes unanimously. We'll see this again. Okay, we'll move on to the City Hall remodel. I think everybody should have had a chance to see this by now. It's a pretty straightforward plan. Gives us a little bit a better entrance to provide better safety and security. Shane, do you want to cover the plan?
Yes, I can do that. So with the layout of City Hall, there's not a lot of options that we could see, and this seemed like the best one after a few renditions that we went through. So essentially what it does, if you came in the south door, on either side of the door, there's a little area, just a little pocket that's maybe 2 or 2.5 feet deep. We'd pop that out and then build a vestibule outside. Right there, as Austin's pointing to it. And then where Ted's office has been, between there and this lobby, we would take that wall out. We've got a bunch of electrical to move. Make that kind of a counter with some type of glass there, and then also a counter over to right in that area that Austin's pointing to. There'd be kind of 2 work areas there, 2 counters, to have some kind of a pocket in the window where utility bills or whatever could be passed through. There would be a locked door between, right there. And so if someone came to meet with me or Austin or someone like that, they would approach whoever's working in that area. And then if we're in or not tied up, they'd be able to let them through. So it'd be kind of a controlled access situation. Anyway, we ran this through all of our staff and through these 3 or 4 different renditions that we had, and felt like this would be the best option. Austin, can you go to the elevation? And so that's what it would look like from the outside. We have the entrance coming in from the east side of that new vestibule area. It does save some room as far as parking if we do that. And so that's one of the reasons that it's coming in from the east and taking a 90 to go into the lobby area.
I'm trying to remember how that lines up. Does it go where there's now a sidewalk where there's no parking space directly in front of it?
So there's a sidewalk that parallels the building, and this little new addition would be on that existing sidewalk, and so we wouldn't lose any parking spots. We might have to restripe and have kind of a space, where they would approach the door there on the east side of that new addition.
Okay.
So, Austin, I'm not sure if they were able to get started on it, but it's right. That area of the building is kind of a connection between the old City Hall and the fire station. And so there's a lot of things going in that are taking place in that wall. So they requested the ability to go in and do a little bit of demolition work so that the structural engineer could deal with all of the things that are behind the sheetrock there and come up with the structural plan to make this all work.
Yeah, they said they were going to start today, but I'm not sure what happened, but they did not actually begin work today. So but they do have their dumpster out there. It looks, it's getting prepped. So it's probably, I don't know, probably tomorrow we're looking at a start.
Yeah. So that's essentially what we have. The area that's the records room, which is directly across the hall from Ted's office, those records would be relocated just around the corner to the east. And then that room could be used for files and things that have been historically kept up front.
Shane, are there any ADA issues or any retrofitting we're going to need to do to comply?
The architect, we've discussed that. Looks like everything has been designed to meet ADA. We wouldn't affect the ramp that we have. That's just, right in that area. We'd still have the area out on the Main Street side if someone needed to come up and enter through there. Oh, also a point on that, right where Austin's arrow is there, like on a city council night, that door would be locked, so that office space would be secured, and we would have people come in the Main Street entrance for those night meetings.
Okay. I was looking for the price tag or the estimation on what it was going to cost.
We're not quite there yet. We're getting close, though. I think I plugged a number in of, I didn't really have a clue, to be honest. I think I plugged in about 75,000 in our proposed projects we had at the last meeting. The hard cost I know right now, the design and engineering and electrical design and all that's like $6,000.
Okay.
So question, Shane, so it sounds like this design, this would be used only during the daytime. Council and planning meetings would keep the same door on the west side as today. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then, so you'll basically have an office there. Do you expect people to come through there, or mostly this would just be kind of working with these first two offices? Or I guess if they go to the building department, right, they would go through and then back down the hall.
Yeah, so it would be kind of like having a reception area, so that if someone came, it wouldn't be like it's been in the past where someone could just walk in and go wherever they wanted to. This would be the control point. And then the ladies up front, someone came in and said, hey, can I meet with Shane? They could call, see if I'm there. If I am, then they could let them through this door and take them back to my office, or I could come up and meet that person.
I think this makes a lot better use of the available space. We've had kind of a vacant area there where it's just used for various things, whether it's folding t-shirts for Alpine days, or we used to use that area for elections processing, which we don't do anymore with mail out ballots. So there's some, valuable square footage that could be utilized better by the city, I think.
I like it. It's a good flow.
Yeah, go ahead.
What was that, Lon?
Yeah.
I like it. It's a good flow. I think it works really well. The way it's going there, it feels more natural to me to enter a normal workday type setting in that vicinity. For the people, a lot of people would always just go there anyway. So,
yeah. Okay, great. Greg?
One of the things I like about that south entrance today is it's a double door, so it looks kind of bigger and more sort of formal and open. It looks like here it would go, to an east-facing single door that may be more secure and such. I don't know. Is that kind of the primary goal there? I wonder, potentially you could even have that vestibule not come out quite so far and keep a double door or something, but I don't know. Is it visible? Right.
I think the reason they had that coming that way on the east side is to preserve the parking spaces. If you had entry in the very beginning of it, you're going to lose out on some parking spaces that our staff need. Is that correct, Shane?
That is correct. And
Okay,
I don't see any reason we couldn't put the same size door here as we have up front. It's actually a single door, but it is wide.
Okay.
That should not be a problem. It will be an adjustment for the public. I mean, the city hall entrance has been on the front for as long as that building's been there, I think. So, yeah, it will be different.
Hey, Shane, while we're doing this, are we looking into alarm type systems for the building?
We've talked about it, but haven't gotten to that detail yet because I don't think I can ask, but I don't think the alarm part of it would qualify with the CARES Act funds, but I will check.
Yeah, I understand that if it doesn't qualify, but in the building process, if there's anything that needs to be wired or
Sure.
put in while we're building it, we might as well figure out how to do that right now in that process.
Yep, I agree.
We will need a motion on this since it'll be capital expense.
We did make a motion last week for the CARES fund, and this was part of it. Do we need to do that again?
I don't think at this point. I think the approval you gave 2 weeks ago is fine. When we do get a better estimate and get down to the details, we would bring it back to the council.
So Mayor, 2 weeks ago, that was on the agenda, and it was itemized in that part where that CARES money was going. So what do you think we need to do something different, Mayor?
No. Remember that. Of course, I missed the last meeting, but I think once we get to accepting bids, we might want to review that. And
yeah, I agree to that. If we need a motion to say move ahead with this concept plan, I'm ready to make that motion.
I'm not sure that we need that. Got one to make? Feel free.
Okay. Shane, I make a motion that we allow staff to move ahead with the concept plan as outlined and work with the contractor to get a final estimate on the build out.
Okay, we have a motion by anybody second?
Sure, I'll second.
Okay, second by Carla. Any further discussion?
I just want to kind of to what Greg said, where will the public be a little confused because it's not a front door? What about some potential, maybe Alpine City Hall in that open gable space, just to give that a landmark that is the new entrance?
Shane, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Jessica. That's something that we could talk with the architect about on this. I'm sure something like that could be incorporated.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Jessica. Any further question or discussion? And we'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the next agenda item, signage in our parks. I think this is great and happy that we're moving in that direction. First question I had, Austin, and Shane, is how fast can we move once we get approval?
Well, the landscape architect that we've been working with on this, I think could get right on it. I think it will take a little bit of time to get it done. You know, she had quite a few hours in there. She felt like she could give us a lot better idea on hours after the first sign is kind of put together. And, you know, she makes sure that we're happy and has everything included on there that we want. So I think a good way to go would be is, you know, maybe pick one of the parks, if it's Lambert Park or Three Falls or wherever. Have that as kind of our trial, make sure everybody's happy with it, and then cut it loose from there.
So I had a question. So I feel like the signs are needed in some of the areas like Three Falls that have all these new trails, and Lambert even as people come in. But I kind of feel like maybe even in Haley Park and even Smooth Canyon, are signs really necessary there?
Well, where we thought they could be beneficial is, you know, there's a lot of people that walk in those parks.
Okay.
And so it's more, I guess it's more of just some information on there. And then, you know, if you take this loop, it's 0.5 miles or whatever it is, and just some stuff like that for the public. They
like,
would be much simpler though.
Yeah, and
They'd be smaller,
right,
probably
it's
half the
4x4.
size.
I get it, but I
Yeah.
feel like in where you can see the trails and it's laid out, the advantage I see of, you know, Lambert and other places when I go, if I've never been there, it's kind of nice to know how I can get to different places, or if there's certain trails that I want to try out, how to get there, and to see an overall map. But I feel like if you're going to a smaller park where everything's kind of laid out in front of you, and I totally get it as far as doing the mileage, but I also feel like enough people have either their phones or their Apple Watches or their that kind of lays it out. But I don't know. I guess like I do feel like we do need to be careful on what we put up at the park. I don't want to see a bunch of signs just for the sake of putting signs. If we're going to put the signs there, I want to make sure that it's going to be useful for them and there's a purpose. And I don't know if there's necessarily a great purpose to justify a sign on some of these smaller parks where it's there and they can see the whole layout. That's
I kind
just
of
my
had that
opinion.
question. Yeah, I kind of had that question as well. In the smaller parks, is it more of a park map versus a trail map? You know, I don't know if there's a different purpose there. Sure, there's some trails, but is it, you know, is the design intended to be different with these parks, including, now granted, Burgess does have a decent trail, but, you know, Smooth Canyon or whatever.
Smooth Canyon and Healy Park.
The idea is that it would be a completely different map. So you would just see a zoomed in map. It's just that park only. And then it would be like, here is a suggested loop for you know, walkers, or, you know, and it'd say this is a 1.5 mile loop. Or if you want to do a half mile, you do this loop here. And so it'd be kind of like just tailored for that park.
You know,
Oh no, I totally get
That's
it.
what was discussed. But yeah. So, I mean, like what you see on your screen, you're not going to see like all of the trail system and interconnectivity. That's not the purpose of the smaller ones.
No, I get it. But what I'm saying is, do we want that real estate in the park to have that sign just for that purpose? Is it enough to justify a sign? That's just my question.
It also could be accomplished if we're looking for mileage and things like that. I mean, we could put stamps in the concrete or little placards embedded that tell you how many laps around that path become a mile, something like that. I like Carla's point, because you want to maintain the aesthetic value as much as you can of those smaller parks without clogging up the signage. But I think it's nice to be able to provide some kind of information like that to people who are just getting there, and they want to know how many times you got to walk around the park to get their mileage, their steps in.
Yeah, I also think though that one reason why we get an architect to do this is so that we could actually visualize and see what it would look like in the location of the thing. Is that not what she's doing? Because this isn't creating the sign or constructing the sign, right? Construction of the sign comes after the design of the thing. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I feel the same as what as being said by Carla and Greg and others. But the approach we're taking could be that we just don't do those other smaller areas to the magnitude that we would the prime areas.
Yeah, so just an example at Creekside Park over by the splash pad, if you want to call that kind of the main entrance to the park, we do have a kiosk over there. It's kind of it's nice. It's a 3-legged structure that kind of matches the design of the pavilion. It really doesn't get used for anything. We put paper maps in there that show, like, have an aerial photo and show the mileage around the park. And it's with the sun and everything, it takes not very long to fade them to the point you can't even read them. And so our thought over there was, you could use that kiosk to put a map like this, but if you don't want to do it, that's totally fine. We can cut this back to whatever you'd like to see.
Yeah, and I'd agree that we need to do something there in Creekside, because you can't even read it at all anymore. So it needs either a replace or revision. Hey, I had a question. Did we consider Peterson Park, or did that not kind of meet the goal, the usage level?
I don't think it has the usage level of, that these other parks see, but yeah, we could expand this or cut it back to whatever you'd like.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead. Oh, I just had one other point. I think at both Smooth Canyon and Burgess Park, it may benefit to move the sign a little further north, a little closer to where the pedestrian traffic comes through, potentially on those, still on the same map, but maybe closer to the trail, for example, in Burgess Park. I think that's like the fourth to the bottom one, third to bottom. Fourth.
This one?
Yeah, that one. I thought, because the trail actually is further up towards the top there. And I think the cars kind of come from, north to south sort of there. But as an idea.
Greg, are you
Can we
talking about over by
approve?
the volleyball court?
Well, yeah, either way, you could put it over by volleyball. That might get a little congested, but even if you had it on this side of the road, yeah, a little further up. Yeah, still on the baseball side there, but that might get more visibility naturally as people walk or park. And kind of the same idea with Smooth Canyon.
So my vote is not have a sign at Smooth Canyon or Healy Park.
Well, Smooth Canyon, just to the north along the new parking lot, does have a trail. I mean, we do have some the part of our trail system there. So I'm wondering if this could be just in relationship to our trail system, not our paved trail system that it may only be in one park, but our trail system that we're trying to create interconnected through the whole community.
Yeah, the trail in Healy Park does connect to other trails that go throughout the Healy Heights open space. They're just not it's just kind of a different situation than Lambert Park tying up into the ridge and into Three Falls and all of that.
Yeah.
Right, so are we wanting to, I know it's not really called Redford Run, but it is now. Are we wanting to, you know, identify those trails and I don't even know what the trail's called, but we have that really cute park where we have the covered bridge and there's a bronze statue and, you know, there's kind of some pretty great trails out there that aren't Lambert, aren't Three Falls.
So you're at the
Yeah,
other- Go ahead, Shane.
You know, I'd like to see signage that has continuity. I just don't know if I agree with this whole layout. Can we look at having signage, but not necessarily approve the maps and the routes that are shown? Because
Yeah,
I
I mean-
agree, you know, the redundancy at Smooth Canyon to say, walk this one time for a quarter mile, I mean, may not really need a sign for that.
We can do it however you'd like. In the past, we'd had some, you know, requests for people knowing how far they walk and everything, but they haven't had it up to this point for the most part. So,
Austin, did you get that email I sent you with the picture that in that one area, there's 10 or 12 signs just in that one trailhead? I think
Yeah.
it's also important that we, you know, are sign sensitive. I'm not sure if this proposal would also include maybe creating more of a continuity and a plan for the things that we already have existing. Because we're kind of in sign overload in a few areas, and it would be ideal if they could all come together and create and have a themed one. Can you show that picture, Austin, of those 10 signs?
10 signs. Okay, so it's not the one that I'm showing right now.
I can't see it on my.
Are you not seeing that on your screen?
Mm-mm.
I'm sharing my screen right now, so.
I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's one I think that you're talking about on the end of, is it Moyle?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole bunch of signs. If you're talking about sign overload, I think that's probably the one you're talking about.
And then the other few signs I sent you also was a rodeo up and rodeo down and all of that cross the street. And we have like 5 different styles of signs all right there.
Yeah.
That's that stop sign and that other trail sign. And the reason I sent the stop sign was just to show, even when you just change the feature and add the wood post, it changes the sign. But over there, we've got a lot of different sign styles. So I'd also like to see that we get a single sign style and upgrade some of our existing signage too.
So some of these signs that you're showing, Austin, are up in the Corner Canyon area, up on Hillcrest, that area. Not Hillcrest, sorry, Suncrest.
Suncrest, yeah.
Yeah. They've done a really good job up in that area of creating signage. Some of it isn't consistent, but I think they're trying to do what Jessica is talking about to bring some uniformity to it. I mean, that Maple Hollow trailhead, I know where that one is, and that sign, and it's a little different than some of the other trails are putting in, but they all have that Draper City logo, and which I think is really helpful so that we can identify it as an official trail. But I agree with Jessica that there does need to be some degree of uniformity. And yeah, the way that looks to me is kind of the antithesis of the feeling we want to create up there, even though we do need some type of to let people know what they should be doing there.
I sent the one with the brown background because if you look at any of the state or national parks, that's kind of a common way that they do signage, and it does soften it and fit, with the surroundings a little more too.
Yeah, I think
So
that's
if
a
you
great
wanted to
point in
have-
terms of the,
Yeah.
design and look and feel. But in general, I think this is a really excellent, really important, focus area. I love the direction here.
And I like this one because if we wanted to do metal, you can. Nothing's wrong with metal. I know it seems like Draper's just doing all real natural. I don't think those are going to last as long, but it seems like there might be a way to get the longevity out of a better material, but also fit into the natural surroundings a little better.
Well, I guess that's what we need to work towards. Is we've never really had a standard for signage, so we've never had a lot of these trailhead marks. So we did get those signs, and maybe we should have had a brown background to them, but we can work on that consistency and get it the way you want it.
What input have we had from the Trails Committee on style?
I'm actually on here, Lon. This is Will. I've been sitting on my hands trying to listen to this discussion. Here's the challenge, guys. It's over the years evolved to be different things. We had a great project where they came in and they did all these nice wood ones. And then we had the ones where they did them as 2x4s and they pointed them and they, burned the wood, and that was its style. It didn't last. And then we did the other ones that were the cedar posts, and they did a cross, with our logo on it. Well, you can find about 3 of those is all you can find anymore. So we went to the brown vertical ones because they don't look so bad out of place. They don't look so commercial like what we're seeing here. But then what we find is they get knocked out, pulled out, done. And so eventually what starts to happen, even in Suncrest, I was talking with Bill up there the other day, signage is probably more of a problem for him than maintaining and keeping his trails because they get damaged. People don't like how they look, and they have not come up with a good plan. That's why you see even they're trying to go back and do it, but we don't have the kind of budget to experiment and go back and forth. We want to get signage on everything we can. I counted in Lambert Park, what day was that? Last Thursday when I rode through there, 9 different signs that we have the post for it, but the signs have come off. And I thought, okay, what do we do? How do you maintain it? Because it's an expense we can't afford to do. This sign right here, this Maple Hollow one, it's been replaced several times this summer. And somebody bumps into it, the wood splits, it cracks. It's just one of the things that he's dealing with over there all the time. And he says, I hope somebody comes up with a great design that feels natural to be there, because right now there isn't one. So what we're trying to do, what we're really focusing on now is on these trailheads to create a map for the area that you're in and make it uniform. So it's an Alpine trail, it's an Alpine trail map. And whether you need it in Smooth Canyon or Healy, I don't know. That's not a big deal to us. Like Shane said, we can add to or take away but there is a request, even though with all this new technology and stuff, when people are out walking, they want to know in their mind, somehow seeing that they're on the trail is done. They've done it on Suncrest, 3 different trails. They've done, okay, you're half mile into it. You're 3/4 mile into it. You're a mile into it. Guess which ones they get the best information from? Those trails that have that. People like it. I don't know why, because they got their Strava, they got their trail deal, they got but when they're doing it, they like to see that in front of them. We haven't had the time or money to go do that. So what we're trying to propose tonight really is, let's start with the trailheads. Let's get a real nice sign up at every trailhead. And then our next job is to identify every single trail and get them signed. And if you guys have a budget that will allow us to go do it, we'll do it. I mean, I had Lone Peak put up no mud on the trails. It's very commercial looking. It's a metal post. And then it's a steel background, because we found that they will last the best, but they put it on everyone. Do not ride trail when it's muddy. You know, we put those everywhere. We put up, what, Shane, 24 of those this year?
I believe so.
And guys, it looks commercial, but guess what? It's happening. It's helping that kind of thing. Of course, it hasn't hurt us not to have any muddy trails since then, but people have commented, they've seen it, they know it. So we love the ideas. We'd love to hear your input. We're looking at it, but when we have a kiosk, we think that's a great place to put a trailhead sign that tells us and then gives people the direction. You can't imagine how many people, even though this sign right here that's in the picture now is wrong and you can't tell where you are on it, people go look at it and try and figure it out, and they'll stand there forever and not have a clue what anymore. And it's got too much writing and not enough sign. So we don't want to do that. We want to simplify it. And that's why we got this landscape architect that can give us design. That's what, there's a couple trailheads that they've done it on up in Suncrest too, that look great. And they've used a good sign. They're brand new and they're in vertigo at the bottom. That's where they did it. They did another one that they're going to place up at the top there where that little small parking area is. And then they built a whole park up there, and they've got one there already. So anyhow, that's what we're looking for. We've got some ideas. And I think, Shane, you hit it perfectly tonight, which let's do Lambert, or let's do Three Falls, or let's do whatever and get them up. Then look at it, see it in place. This is what we'd like. This is going to be great uniform. Do the other ones that we've got to go do with that same kind of thing, or here's some things to tweak. And she can get it printed and bring in exactly what we're going to do before we actually put it on the sign and make a permanent sign. But we can get that and then show you, and you can review the ones for, say, Lambert, or you can review the ones for wherever. But that's what we're trying to get approval on, so we can get something started that starts to help people know where they are up there.
Well, I think we talked a few meetings ago about something done before the snow flies this year, so that, we have good information at each one of our new parking lots. We have new parking lots for Three Falls. We have new ones for a couple of them with Lambert Park. There are points of contact for the people who are using the park that are pretty heavily used. And today we don't have the best signage there at even those locations. So something there would be ideal as soon as we could, because the usage right now is heavy. It's heavy for Corner Canyon. It's heavy for us. It's heavy for just about every open space in the county.
Mayor, I'll make a motion then.
Thank you, Lon.
I make a motion that we do phase 1 of the sign architecture. Let's see, the trail sign project, starting with first one, Lambert Park, second one, Three Falls. And that be phase 1.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Thank you, Carla. So we have a motion by Lon Lott, seconded by Carla Merrill, to start with Lambert Park and Three Falls for the initial phase 1 of our signage. Any further discussion?
Can we include in that motion that the design, like Will said, we can see the design before anything's put in the ground?
Yeah, that's what I thought that's what we were doing.
That is
Okay.
the architectural trail sign project.
Okay.
So yes, we'll need to know what the costs are of the signs themselves after we get the design, and then approve that. Is my understanding.
Yes, it will be brought back to the city council.
Okay. Any further question?
I just have one question, Mayor.
Yep.
Since Will is here on the phone, I think we a couple meetings back we talked about having on our next agenda item the modification of the trail up along the top of Lambert, as well as signage for that. Can we include this in that, or is that?
Yeah, it's happening, Jason. Good point. I met with Jed this morning. He was going to send out an invite for everybody next week to come walk that, because Shane was out of town this week. So Jed was taking that. I didn't see the invite yet, but I imagine by tomorrow we'll all get the invites to go up and actually flag it and see. He was running into some things on his map that showed some pretty good elevation that he was concerned about. So he said, let's map it, flag it, and then we can go to there, and we will put one. We did talk about that in our meeting. In fact, isn't there one on there, Austin, that we did up there where Jason's talking? We talked about that one.
Let me see if it's in the, hold on. Yeah, I think it might.
Remember that, guys? We talked about putting it up there and where it was going to be. And then we said, when we do the walk on the trail, we'll actually set exactly where that is. I don't know if I didn't look to see if it was in the packet because we just had talked about it. So I thought it was there.
Yeah, and
Jason,
the discussion,
yes, that is on there.
Yeah, the discussion from that previous meeting, Jason, was to bring that item back at either the first or second meeting in October. And we've been working on that. Jed actually took our contours and drew a profile. I think it's like 10 or 15 feet west of the city boundary, so that you'll be able to see the slopes, just a straight shot along the boundary. And he has that profile. We're just doing a couple things. And then, like Will said, we're going to try to get everybody out there to do a field visit, have these maps to look at, and let you see what it would look like.
Awesome. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, let's put the motion to a vote. Motion to use Lambert and Three Falls as phase 1 with the requisite that we see the plan before we create the signs, and that passes council approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Will, for all your work on that as well. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Great fun. We're trying to make this fun for everybody to see and be a part of. So any ideas we love.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item D, the CARES Act funds. Shane, do you want to take that one as well?
Yes, I can take that. So the council asked us to contact the schools and see if they needed help in any areas. I made contact with Rob Smith, and he's the assistant superintendent, I believe is his title. He said several of the cities have worked with them on these projects. One of the main things they have done is installed touchless water bottle fill stations. And so I said, is that a need at these 3 schools? He says, yes, that would be great. So he provided us the pricing that they've had at the other schools that have installed these or are working towards installing them. And so that's the proposal we have at this point. I did contact the receptionist at Mountainville and left a message for the principal to call me. I have not received a call back from her yet. So that's what we have at this point. I think compared to the money we have, it's a fairly minimal expense that they feel like would be beneficial to all of the kids.
About $4,500, is that right?
I think that's each, and that's times 3.
Okay. You know, to me, it's we have this money. There are two sides to this discussion. You know, the school district has our tax money and it has other revenues to deal with, but we're also underfunding our schools at many levels. So I guess you could argue both sides of that. We do have this COVID money available to us. I think, you know, this is something that would have a direct impact on the kids in our community. So to me, it seems like something that would benefit us directly as a community and our children. And we do have funding available. Other thoughts?
Just one more point,
Just
Mayor.
Go ahead, Shane.
Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead, Shane.
Greg. I should have mentioned this before. I did contact the county about, you know, with Alpine students going to Lone Peak High School, because that high school does not sit within our city boundaries. We wouldn't be able to use that money there.
So we're talking about potentially the charter school, the other elementary schools, and the middle school.
Yes, that's correct.
And so, Shane, have they already installed these, or they will be purchasing these? And then, you know, my other question was, so Timberline only needed one. I would have thought that, you know, all things equal, need, you know, at least a couple because it's a bigger school.
Yeah. My understanding is these have not been installed. And I can check with them and, you know, see if they feel like they have need for more than one unit.
Can I ask how much in care funds we have to spend as a city?
738,000 and some change.
And what have we itemized a list of how we're going to spend that within our city already? Have we figured out a way, or are we saying right now, we're not going to be able to spend that? Let's send this to the schools. I'm just kind of curious what the plan is to allocate those funds appropriately.
So we had that list of projects with some estimates at the last meeting. We're refining that as we go along, and we'll bring an update back to the council as we get some costs nailed down. But as of 2 weeks ago, and the list that we had and where we've been refining it and our estimate for City Hall, the funding at this point does not appear to be an issue. We have some things we're looking at the fire station as well. And even with those, I don't see it being an issue there.
I guess just a follow-up question. I mean, with our expansion or our modification to City Hall, I would assume that we could do a lot of things, you know, more expensive, less expensive, everything, including you know, this camera related stuff and electronic related stuff and upgraded door systems that automatically unlock when they're, I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. Do you see us not being able to spend those funds, and that's why we kind of need to look for other areas like this to spend them?
I think the projects that,
I was going to say, from our last meeting in the packet, the spending was pretty substantial in upgrading the AV system in the council room. Do you remember that 2 weeks ago?
Jason was excused prior to that discussion.
That's why, Jason. You still
Yeah.
should have read the packet.
yeah, sorry, Jason. I forgot that you weren't there for that. But yeah, we feel like with the projects we have planned and the estimates that everything's going along a good track here. But I think this will be an agenda item at every city council meeting until things are finished up.
Carla, I think you pointed a while back and several meetings ago that we need to spend the money on the city.
Right.
Spend it if we've got it. And I've kind of come back around to that, to agreeing with that point. Originally, I felt like it was going to be good to be able to turn some back, just, you know, essentially as a tax protest. But the reality is it'll be respent by the county as soon as we give it back to them. So to your point, I think we need to make sure that we're exhausting all of the good ideas out there to spend it.
then Shane, to add
Yeah.
to that, what about the flow trail off of Vista Ridge going into Three Falls? Where is
So
that in the process?
I got that information from you just before I left, and I have not had a chance to meet with Will on it yet, but I will be back on Monday and we will be looking at that.
Awesome. And if you can let me know, I would love to attend that meeting.
Okay. I don't
Thank you.
know for sure if it's would qualify for the CARES Act funds, but it's either
Oh.
way, it's something we can look at, all of these things that we've proposed. I've called and had a conversation with Peter Brown at Utah County. There were a couple of things. For example, we had in costs that we submitted. We've already submitted our second quarter costs and documentation. We had submitted to reimburse ourselves for the money we paid our Alpine Days chairperson. That turned out to not qualify. So we had to pull that back out.
Right. And if he needs any supporting documentation, I'd be happy to go out to these trails when the mountain bike teams are working out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And we can definitely have the conversation with Peter Brown and get kind of a plan nailed down if we need to tweak anything on that thing that you sent me, and then we can show him, see what he says.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is somebody willing to make a motion on this?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I do feel like this is providing something to the community that would be beneficial for our children. I'll make a motion that we utilize some of the care funds money to provide water stations at those schools as outlined on the invoice submitted, estimate submitted.
Do you want to cap it at that amount, Lon?
Yeah, I think at this moment in time, someone said Mountville Academy. Is that a necessary? Is that one necessary to include in this, though, or?
They haven't gotten back to us yet, Lon, so I'm not sure if they have any needs. I left it pretty open-ended with Rob, just, hey, is there something we can help you with? And this is what he came back with.
Okay. Okay. I think this has been a little bit fluid too, Mayor, along the journey. If we feel that we need to purchase another fountain next week or whatever, then let's talk about it again.
Okay. Okay, so
cap it at this.
Yep.
Good deal. So we have a motion by Lon. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Lon Lot, second by Carla Merrill. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Is that Jason?
And I just want to add a caveat. I'm not opposed to it, but I think we could do it later after we've made sure that we do not need those funds within the city somewhere else. I think there's a fiduciary responsibility to individuals in the city to use those funds if possible. If they're not, then I'm for it, but I would like to have delayed this a little bit.
It's like a total of $4,000, Jason.
Yeah.
And it's helping all the students in the city.
It actually, last week, Jason, also, it looked like we were going to be turning back over 100,000 based on the projects that we had already anticipated doing.
And just to follow up on that, I don't think we would end up turning any back, because there's a lot of our public safety wages at least a part of them that could chew up a lot of that money. And in my mind, it's already in our budget. We've already planned for it. But if it comes down to turning it back or using it, we could turn around and use that money in that way at the tail end.
Well, and I actually feel like we need to maintain a little bit of a piggy bank with maybe a one project that we could dedicate it to at the last minute if we need to. But I mean, if you look at the fact that both Orem and Provo have been placed back on orange today, I guarantee you there are more ways now to spend that money for them because of that status change. So that could happen to us as well. And so it'd be nice to have a little bit of a reserve in order to address that if it happens.
And I did misspeak earlier. I thought it was the 3,900 and change times 3, but I had just looked at it on my phone and did not read that correctly. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a nominal amount.
Yes.
Okay, so we've actually had the vote. It passed 4-1, Jason being the dissenting vote. So the motion does pass. All right, we'll proceed to the rest of our meeting. Staff reports. David, did you have anything that you'd like to talk to the group about?
No, I don't have anything. Do you have anything for me?
We should have soon, as soon as Jane gets back.
Okay, and then are we holding a closed session tonight? I notice it's on the agenda.
I'm not aware of any reason.
No, I'm not either.
In that case, I'll leave the meeting then. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
David.
David.
Okay, Austin.
Yeah, I have a few things here. So I just I'm going to pull something up on the screen. So the city has received someone asking to use Creekside Park for an event. And so this is, they're calling it Get Loud in the Park. It's to help raise awareness for the Operation Underground Railroad, human trafficking, that kind of a thing. And so this is an event to raise money and raise awareness for that. They are looking for a location. They really like Creekside Park, and the event date would be October 17th from 5 to 10 p.m. Some of the things that they have outlined that they would include at this event would be vendors. They would have food trucks, booths, activities, and also, so I guess looking at this, I mean, food trucks, we've had food trucks in Creekside Park before. Booths, that's something that we've done at Alpine Days. I wonder if, some of these are things that we even want to consider, like the bouncy houses, the climbing walls, those kind of things. Those seems like there could be liabilities for the city. But anyways, this is what they're proposing. We've been getting increased proposals to use the park recently, requests to use it. And honestly, we have our mass gathering ordinance, which kind of outlines some of the requirements for that they have to, speak with the police chief, that they have to provide bathrooms. But at the end of the day, it's really the city council's call on which events happen and which ones don't. It's kind of left open-ended. And so, maybe we want to figure out a more firm policy as a city, what type of events we want to allow, because I could just foresee if an event like this were approved, others might say, well, we want to do an event there too. And so it could open up other requests. And so I'm just, Shane and I were kind of talking about it, and maybe we need to have more of stronger or a more firm policy so that we can be, instead of being just kind of arbitrary, we're actually be more consistent on what types of events we're allowing.
Well, and I would say there's a short-term and a long-term perspective on, and I would say in the short term that a request of this nature at this time, based on current events and the direction Utah County is headed right now with the COVID issues, I don't think we should be approving any mass gatherings at the moment. I think the cause is great. There's a terrific cause, and there's all the reason to do that under normal circumstances. But right now, 2 of our neighbor cities have been moved to orange, and it could easily happen to us because if you look at the numbers, Alpine, Cedar Hills, and Highland are very similar to Provo and Orem in the transmission rate, and the diagnostic numbers are not in our favor. It could easily go to orange for us, the rest of us, if things don't change quickly. And so I think it'd be a little bit premature to award a request like this in the short term. In the long term, I agree, we need to come up with some policies and determine exactly what we do want to approve, what types of events we want to do. But in the short, if I were voting in the short term, I would say no to something like this. Council?
I concur.
I concur.
Yeah, I'd agree as well. But I think to Austin's point, is there should we ever have these things, or should we never have them, or is there a fair way to differentiate or discriminate on requests, right? How do we approve worthy causes in our view, but others that are not? So I think it's a good question. Maybe not for now, but do we host events, for a fee or not, in that park or any park?
Yeah, I go back to the last one we did. I guess the one that stuck in my mind the most was when we had the state championship mountain bike race up in Lambert Park, and how much that impacted the surrounding area, not just the park, but the neighbors around the park. And that was a 2-day event, I think it was, and the impact was pretty dramatic. So I think those are the kinds of things we need to consider if we're going to turn over Creekside Park, for example, to a large festival or something that of that nature. There are impacts on the local neighborhoods. Anybody else?
Mayor, just a quick comment regarding public safety services. In addition to probably what Chief William would add, there is an impact when you hit a certain number where we have to provide first aid or medical booth or ambulance services. And just under the current climate, that has been a little bit challenging for us to meet some of those demands because we're pulling someone in that's not on duty, if you will. They're coming in off duty to fill those, and for short windows of time, it's just that we've had a challenge filling those additional special event permits. An example would be the football games at Lone Peak High School, having to staff that appropriately. Whenever we add to that, there's just an impact. Not saying it's not doable, but just some challenges from our end.
Yeah, good point, Reed. Thank you for bringing that up.
And then I've got a question. Do we charge that cost to the organizers?
I don't think we have in the past, but we should.
I think we definitely should.
Yeah, so on an event like this, our mass gathering ordinance, we have a mass gathering fee, which is like $250, and then there's a $1,000 deposit, and that's it. That's all we have. If it's a race, we do charge $500, but again, that's not that much money either.
Yeah, I think what you need to do is you need to factor in the cost of our safety district costs.
And we do have a fee schedule that we implement for events like that. So there's an ability to charge for that. The challenge sometimes isn't necessarily the collecting the fee, it's being able to staff it appropriately.
Okay.
So the police department does much of the same thing. We do have a fee that we initiate when we're asked to do special events like this one that's being requested. For those of you who were in our last public safety meeting, we just raised that fee to help cover our costs because we were falling a little bit behind. But I think the council that what you're coming to the conclusion of is the right conclusion. We're asking our staff to limit contact with the public, to limit exposure. And so to bring in a mass gathering like this would just be contrary to what we're trying to do. So.
Yeah, I would hate to see Alpine become the next newsworthy outbreak. Okay, so
we do still have that concert or something coming up here in the near future, right?
Yes,
But
yeah, that's coming up next week.
that was one of the exceptions. I think we all talked about being an exception more than making a rule on starting to allow other events. I'm personally think that we ought to just maintain the park the way we have been doing and not have any of these gatherings anyway. I think it's rolling. Creekside Park is moving well with the families. We are beginning to have some conflict of people not reserving a pavilion, and others who have reserved the pavilion going there and having to ask them to leave. That's been happening. But I think that if we continue to just have it as a family park like it is, that's my vote.
I agree with Lon. I'd prefer to keep it as a family park as well and not have large gatherings there outside of city-run Alpine Days events, etc.
I think that was the original intent of the park. And I think the more we can do to keep it a quiet, nice place for people to gather unofficially, I think the better. Okay, enough input for you, Austin, on that one?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was all I had on that.
Austin, is that clear enough policy though? I mean, you wanted to say you wanted a more firm, clear policy.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty clear, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be that, we want that to be more of a family park, and that really events there are kind of an exception, a rare thing that probably wouldn't happen unless it's a special circumstance or something. If I'm understanding correctly.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, yeah, that's what I'm understanding, but go ahead, Mayor. Sorry.
Well, I was going to ask, could you come up with some language that would kind of outline the discussion and come back with a policy in the next meeting?
Sure, we can do that. Yep.
Okay. But as far as that mass gathering goes, the request that you talked about, I think we got to shut that down for the sake of public safety right now. Did you have anything else?
Let's see, I had a couple more things just to kind of add on to our trail discussion that we had earlier tonight. So we are working on a new draft of the trail master plan. And so it's going to take into consideration some of these trail kiosks that we're going to be having, and also just updating some of the trails that are out of date now. And so that'll be coming down the pipe. And then we've been working on a trail committee ordinance. So right now our trail committee, they just kind of meet. They don't have a formal schedule. They don't take minutes. And so we need to formalize that. And so we're creating an ordinance that will outline their procedures, when they meet, how they meet, etc., so that they can be a more official body of the city. And, they can hold public, the public can participate if they so desire. So that's something that's being worked on in addition to all the trail kiosk and stuff that we're working on right now.
Okay. Yeah, the trail committee's moving and shaking. They do a lot. Will, we appreciate all the work that you and everybody puts into that committee. It's probably one of the most productive parts of our city.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Just Austin, I do have that ordinance ready to, or that committee thing ready to come back to you. Just an update on trails. We've lacked a connection on Stony Way across there into, this is a Zoman. We met with them last week and laid out what will look good there. So we'll tie that in. Unfortunately, that trail does have a break. You have to come off of it, go through the parking area and then back on. But you know what? We're working with it. We met with them and we've laid it out, and that should be under construction. Well, it is under construction right now. So That'll be done in the next couple weeks.
That's a great trail. There's some gut busters up there.
Yep.
I think I complained to you about one of them that I got smoked on.
So you feel better. So you feel better about it. I went back after that and tried again. I didn't make it the next time.
Yeah. It's a beat. That is
so, but we're working on that. We've realigned it. You'll see a new trail there before the fall's up.
Okay. That's great. Thank you, Will. Chief William, do you have anything?
Yeah, so let me just bring an issue up that's been discussed. I know you guys have seen reports in the paper about the wearing of masks and the enforcement of masks around the county. You've seen what happened in Provo and Orem today, where they were put back on orange. You probably saw recently that Provo passed an ordinance about requiring the wearing of masks throughout the city. And then there's a lot of discussion on how that's enforced and who's going to enforce that. We've talked amongst ourselves as chiefs and law enforcement throughout the county, and we've taken a stance that it's a public health order, it's not criminal in nature. And we get called on occasion with complaints of larger groups or gatherings that are not wearing masks. We've always responded and taken the position of giving a friendly reminder that's a good idea to wear masks. It is a difficult position to be in, as you can imagine myself, and our preference is to not make it a mandate. And I don't think this council has asked that. Highland City has not officially discussed it, but I've talked to Mayor Mann about that, and I'm just telling you what I told him. We'd rather not make it a mandate, but call on the residents to take a personal responsibility to wear them. So enforcement, as you've seen in the news, is being asked to do more and more, and it's a difficult position to put law enforcement in, where you're creating confrontations and trying to enforce the mask or the wearing of masks. And those types of situations can, as you can imagine, there's a segment of the population that would prefer not to wear masks, and that just creates confrontation, which we're trying to de-escalate as opposed to escalate situations. So again, if there's discussion, I know that we can have that offline, but that's in essence the stance that we're taking right now.
Can't you just at least throw a water balloon at them?
I guess we can go purchase water balloons, but then again, we're creating confrontation. So, trying to de-escalate here.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I agree. It's a difficult thing. I mean, I think our officers have enough to deal with right now without that emotional football. There was discussion. There was a special meeting with the planning commissioners and mayors on Friday. In that meeting, it was discussed among the planning commissioners to whether or not they should move forward with a county-wide mask mandate. Commissioner Tanner Ainge, felt pretty strongly that we should have one. Commissioner Ivy's position was unknown at the time, and the third commissioner was leaning against it. So as a result, once the decision was made, it was made in favor of education over enforcement. So there's no countywide mandate right now, but the situation seems to be heating up in our county specifically. We're being called out by the mayor, by the governor, and we're on the radar. And that's why I said what I did earlier about, it could easily expand to Alpine, Highland, Cedar Hills, the status change, and of course that means economic disaster for a lot of people. So we're trying to avoid that while still maintaining a strong position that we should act responsibly. Reed, what do you have for us? You've been out west fighting fires.
We had quite a couple 2-week deployment. Had some good experience for one of our newer firefighters to give him some opportunity to gain some additional skills. We currently have 3 individuals out that did a crew swap with us about a little over a week and a half ago. The state of California requested a 7-day extension today for that to occur. So they'll be out for an extra week with a return on October 4th. We had a pretty significant incident in our neighboring community of Pleasant Grove about a week or so ago, where we had 34 homes evacuated due to fire pushing down canyon. we had crews that were participating there and ended up helping run that incident for about 12 hours of that process. It was a pretty rude awakening to what could be a potential in our own community in the bench up on the east side and on the north slope above Alpine. So we'll continue to just monitor that. It's still very dry. And so as a result, the state has pushed to not have the open burn window occur for this period of time. And so we'll push some information out on our website about that, but we are not actively accepting burn permits for the fall window.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable that we have enough part-time and full-time staff to cover those people who are extending their stay in California?
It's been a process where we've been tight on our schedule, but we've been making it work. And so I feel comfortable continuing with that plan. We do anticipate that on the back of this one, that it will probably be a reoccurring thing for the next several months. And so we'll weigh those on a case-by-case basis.
Is it increasing our overtime pay at all?
So the process when we go out on an EMAC deployment, the backfill costs are covered by the state of California. So if we lose a position and backfill it, then we can charge the state of California for that backfill. So there's no negative impact to the district, we feel, at this time. There are positive impacts from a training and financial standpoint. There's always inherent risk with doing this, though, with two staff and potential challenges with obviously safety concerns for firefighters, but we make sure we send qualified people out to do the job.
Okay. Thank you, Reed. Appreciate all you're doing.
Thank
Shane, have anything?
Not anything in particular. We just been working on these CARES Act projects and several other things. We completed our annual overlay project. It went really well down on Sunset Drive and Country Manor and some of the cul-de-sacs that run east off of Country Manor. So everything's just really busy.
Okay. Thank you. I have a few things I'd just like to run through real quickly. I think we've covered the fact that some of our neighboring cities have been moved to a different status. I'd like to avoid that at all costs. And I think, everybody has a different opinion about the mask issue. I feel pretty strongly myself that people should wear a mask when they're going to come in contact with people they don't know or aren't spending time around. But I think as leaders in the community, we should be encouraging responsible behavior every time we get an opportunity to do so. Obviously, the younger crowd is particularly in the limelight right now. And I think part of the challenge that the county is dealing with is if we're going to rest on education as our solution, how do we reach the young people? Who will they listen to? And who can we get to address them in a way that will help them understand the significance of the problem? So that's one of the challenges we're working with. But any opportunity we have to provide influence, I think if we can encourage people to wear masks, it will help curb the problem. Funny, I go from there to this, but I would still like to find a way to help maybe provide a senior dinner. With the absence of Alpine days this year, I think one of the big things we missed was getting our senior community out at an event, especially for them. So I'd love to hear any ideas on how we could do that and remain safe at the same time to get our seniors involved and just acknowledge them and provide a dinner for them. I think that's a really important part of Alpine Days that we've missed, and it would be great if we could figure out a way to do it in a safe manner. So open ideas there. Anybody have strong feelings one way or the other, whether we should be doing that or not? Okay.
I don't think we should at this time, honestly, for seniors.
Yeah.
You're talking about senior citizens, not seniors in high school, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, going back to why we wouldn't allow large gatherings even outside of Creekside, I don't know why we would bring a bunch of citizens, senior citizens together in an indoor setting unless you're sitting everyone apart and they can't hear each other if they're sitting more than 6 feet apart. I
Yeah.
mean, I like the idea and I do think we should do something, but I just don't think now is the time.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with you, Carla. I guess what I'm talking about and getting creative is maybe there's a way we take dinner to them. Maybe they stay in place and there's a way we can serve them, some way to make them feel acknowledged, and because they're a huge part of our community. And I'd love to be able to do something that would bring some level of recognition to that. And not necessarily as a gathering, like you said, but maybe a way we can in-serve them.
Yeah, so maybe work with Alpine Youth Council to do that
Mhm.
kind of like a Meals on Wheels or whatnot.
Yeah, okay. All right, so if any of you, anybody else has suggestions or ideas on how we could carry that out in a way that would be impactful to the senior community, I think that would be great. I'd love to hear from you. And then maybe we have a goal of doing that by the end of October at the latest. Third on my list was the fact that there'll be a publication sent out by the Chamber of Commerce to all of the residents in all of the participating cities. Each mayor was asked to write a letter to be basically an introduction to the city. And so what I tried to do is, and I'll send something out later on this week, kind of a preview of what that looks like from Alpine. But my letter addressed the fact that our city is comprised of so many acres of landscape, but about 20, I think it was 27 or 28% of that is currently dedicated to open spaces. And I use that as kind of the unique value of Alpine, is that we have a large percentage of our city committed to open space and parks and public recreation, things like that. And use that as a way to segue into supporting local business, because I know that people are coming in from outside of our own community to use our parks and our trails, soccer games and so forth. And so my point of view is to encourage each of them to spend a few bucks while they're here and supporting Alpine business. Again, I'll get that out to each of you. I think everybody was asked to submit a picture of themselves for that article. Hopefully everybody got a chance to respond to that. The shooting area, I think everybody saw the announcement that we have an official declaration of emergency closure for 30 days by the Forest Service. That came after a lot of work. I mean, the last few years trying to get that to happen. The irony there is that they asked me to resubmit the same letter I wrote 2 years ago to get the same result when we were denied, and this time it was accepted. The limitations are a little bit frustrating as well. The Forest Service by federal law is only allowed to grant one temporary closure of any area to shooting under these guidelines. Now there's another way we can move into no shooting status, but that is a long process that the Forest Service has to go through, and that process has started, but there's no way it'll be happening anywhere in the near future. So what we have is a 30-day closure. We will be putting up signage right away along the entire border of Lambert Park and the federal land to announce that there will be no shooting. And so we have it for this next 30-day period. It did come as a little bit of a surprise. It came so quickly this time. I didn't really realize that it had been enacted by the Forest Service 1 day prior to me being notified. So, if we can get it extended in any way, we will, but we've been told that that's not possible at this point.
Mayor,
Yes.
how is that enforced? Do we use the police to do that now, or what's that?
They have not answered that from the Forest Service standpoint. From our view, and Brian, you may have some input on this, but I think we're able to report illegal shooting right now, even though our police force is not authorized to cross that line and enforce it. They can certainly be on our property and let people know that they're breaking the law. The county sheriff, I believe, has ultimate jurisdiction there, but so at this point, I don't believe we have jurisdiction at all. Brian?
Mayor, you're correct. So we can go up there and take information and let people know that they are indeed breaking the law, but there's not any enforcement action that we can take on federal land.
Yeah. I think in the past, the county sheriff has worked with the Forest Service. I think you find examples of that going up the canyon. And I don't know exactly how that works, but I'll be in touch again with the Forest Service tomorrow to get some clarity on that.
And I'll reach out to Sheriff Smith and see if he has any experience with this, and he might have some input.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny that we had to make the request because, I mean, we've all read about the fires we've had recently. I think 3 out of the last 5 major fires were started by gunfire. And so, in my opinion, it shouldn't take a request by any city or municipality. That it should be common sense that the Forest Service just shuts it down when there's such a grave danger. When we have wildfires breaking out all over the West, and we're continuing to allow activity that creates fire, it doesn't make much sense. But that's where we are. Last item that I had on my list was the city attorney selection process. Shane and I had interviews 2 weeks ago. We've narrowed it down to 2 firms that we're looking at, and we'll have another round of interviews coming up in the next week. But we should be able to give David Church good news in our next meeting, if not sooner. That's all I have. Jessica, do you have anything? Oh, you're muted.
This ties into the committees, the Trails Committee, and then we had talked about other possible committees, an arts committee, and maybe a historical committee. And in doing so, you know, you have to notify the public of meetings. And so I had sent Shane an updated website. I think our city website needs to be updated so that we can have just a more interactive experience. And Shane, you were supposed to get with Carolyn. I wondered if you were able to do that to see if we could potentially update our website and maybe also have that as part of our CARES funding.
I did talk with her, and she said with our current whatever software we use for our website, it's maybe not impossible, but it might be a challenge to put the events type calendar up there. But you know, the website hasn't been updated for, I'm not sure when the last time, you know, a major overhaul. So maybe that's something that we should be looking at, and this could be incorporated into it.
Okay, because I'm just, you know, with all the upgrading of our technology right now at City Hall, yeah, maybe the timing would work. And then looking, you know, at keeping the community up to date. I noticed on the website that I'd sent you, they had a little banner across the bottom that talked about City Hall being closed to walk-ins. So it seemed like it could meet the CARES Act requirement as far as communicating better with the community.
Yes. So we'll look further into that and bring some more information back on some options.
Okay. And then Austin, so when you're looking at doing the Trails Committee and the guidelines, can that overlay to any committee that we would want to reinstate, like arts or historical? We would just need to change the wording.
Yeah, so it's really kind of a template, but in theory, it would be easy to adapt it to another public body and just, you know, just change a few words here and there and have roughly the same ordinance for different committees.
Okay. And then last thing, just an update on the farmers market. Greg Gordon's family was there, and it seemed, even though it rained, we decided it rained that day because Alpine had its first farmers market in I don't know how long, but it was well attended. There were some great booths, and it was just fun to see the community out. And that's it.
Did you feel like it was, I know that we approved it, kind of the second event kind of predicated on how the first event went. Do you see any reason not to move forward?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. It was, there didn't really seem to be any parking issues. And again, just the fact that there were people out in the rain kind of spoke to, I think, the desire that people have for that kind of event.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree as well. And yeah, I don't think there was any parking issue the whole time. I don't think anyone parked illegal the whole time. And good event, and a moderate sized crowd, and certainly not more than for the Snow Shack probably, but seemed to be a good event, good community involvement.
Good deal. Thanks, Jessica. Anything else? Okay. Carla, do you have anything for the group?
I don't. I just was going to talk about the flow trail, but we already covered that, so I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. Greg?
I wondered if that pavilion in Burgess Park that's kind of become dilapidated could be restored within our CARES funding as a way to allow more people to get outside and spread out there. Shane, do you think that might qualify?
It possibly could. I did talk with Cal about that. It's been about a week ago that building was tagged with graffiti, and for whatever reason, it's been a continuous problem down there, and that's why there's no tables in there right now, no picnic tables. They had a lot of graffiti on them and some profanity and things, and so at one point in time, several years ago, they were removed. So, we can look at whatever the council would like us to down there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Clearly there's a challenge there, and maybe it's because it's closer to the middle school, but there is another one there and in other parks around the city. Apparently, it seems like those escape it more readily. I don't know if there's a way to enforce it or just put on a camera, or is it simply by nature of the location never going to be able to avoid graffiti?
I think one way you avoid graffiti is remove the sides and just have it be a pavilion with no sides.
Like the one in the park,
right?
Next to City Hall.
Yeah, and in that particular pavilion, I guess it'd be the west end of it. There's some old restrooms there that have been closed for a long time. So it's not just a wall on that particular one. That'd be a little more work to open the one end up. But it could be done, I think. So we'll look at that.
Speaking of vandalism, I will be addressing that in our next newsline, talking about penalties, because I think we've been patient long enough. We've been compensated for some of the property damage, but I think it's time for charges to be pressed and to let people know that that's going to happen.
Yes, and I should have mentioned that we did have another restroom vandalized, and then somebody really tore up the football field at Burgess Park in a car or truck over the weekend.
Okay, so they'll be our first cases when you can catch them.
Yep.
I do want to press charges against people like that. I'm tired of it. It's destructive and doesn't make any sense to tolerate it.
Yeah.
I had one other item. So about a year ago, it occurred to me that, given Alpine's positioning, we could be a nice gateway almost to the mountains or the ski resorts by aerial transit, which could really change the traffic flow and the character of the city. This summer, I saw a presentation on a proposal to do that up Little Cottonwood Canyon. And last week as well, I attended a Central Wasatch Commission meeting where that was one of the main three proposals on how to solve that, tunneling between, the Cottonwood Canyons and possibly using a high-speed gondola going up. Anyway, I'd hate for us to be reactive to this in a couple of years, but rather, if it were to come up, but rather plan and determine, is this something we want to prevent and control? But looking at it, the distances, the heights, and to me, it looks very feasible as an option, and would certainly be of interest. So I think it's something to watch and maybe watch out for, particularly as we're looking at the transportation element of the general plan and some of those things.
Okay, that's a good point.
So I have a question with that. Are you saying to get to the ski resorts, they want to go through Alpine using airways, or what do you?
That's not a current proposal. Yeah. That's right, and particularly with some of the county land and so on. But that's not a current proposal. But I could, I imagine it could be at some point.
Right, but as far as the airways, we have no control over our airways, and I can't imagine any of the resorts wanting to go through Alpine. Maybe American Fork, but as far as I know, UDOT is only doing 3 proposals. One is a gondola, the other is increasing their bus schedule, and the third one I thought was avalanche sheds. Did you hear more than that at the meeting?
Oh, there was a light rail, a train as well. Yeah, and those are all going up Little Cottonwood, but I think looking far out, yeah, absolutely, we can't control the airways, but perhaps if there was like a base station, in or adjacent to Alpine, good for ski access potentially. And if you look at, what they're proposing there in terms of elevation gain and distance and what they've done in, other places, it might be potentially even feasible. I don't think anything's proposed at all in this sort of county, but maybe something to look forward and try to understand, is that a concern that we could preempt in some way. But they did know that it could connect. You're right. They did notice sort of side projects connecting Big and Little Cottonwood and potentially over into Park City as well, right? So you can imagine, and they've talked about American Fork Canyon. So in the future it could get more creative. That's all.
Yeah, Mineral Basin has been one of their things that they've talked about. That was a big issue up American Fork Canyon here a few years back.
Yeah.
Again, not accessing Alpine in any way.
No, not that proposal. It's not a current proposal, but by the time it became a proposal, I'd hate for it to be too late to react or plan for it.
Yeah, to Lon's point, a few years ago when that came up, there was a certain planning commissioner who was really trying to give a lot of airtime to Snowbird for trying to do that what they did, and there were some issues discovered after that. But the community and the political players came to the table pretty quickly to try to push that back. But it's like we've seen before with any kind of development, it will be back, I'm sure. And with the condition of our canyon right now, with the traffic that's up there, I mean, my kids tried to get up there Sunday. They had to turn around. They couldn't move up the canyon. It's become so congested. So there's going to be a lot of proposals coming our way that will involve, maybe not impact us directly coming from Alpine, but will be impacting us in some way. Thank you, Greg. Jason, do you have anything?
Just a question for Shane off of what was mentioned. Can our CARES Act funds be used for our website to improve it? I didn't quite understand that.
For what?
That's a question we'll ask the county.
Okay, that's all.
We felt like that's the safest way to go you know, since they're getting bombarded with questions from every city and they're the ones really, I guess, responsible. We just have kind of a extension of their agreement, I guess. So I think they're learning, but they may be learning some of this faster than we are because they're dealing with so many different cities and questions.
Okay.
Everything, Mayor.
Lon, do you have anything?
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye.
Hi.
No one has ever opposed that motion. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
thank you.
Thanks.